want to actually implement freedom, if we want to move the ball forward for conservative policies and actually put our country on the right path, and if we believe that America's best days are in front of her, then we have to do something. We have great Tea Party leaders, folks like Connie and Julie, that are out there doing a lot of work, making sure that things like golf tournaments are organized, and that checks are cashed, and that that we're doing events and getting together and having good speakers. But unless we as individuals are willing to get out there and actually do the hard work and sweat a little bit, and do uncomfortable things like talk to our neighbors about who should be elected president, or the problems of the direction our country is facing. If we're not willing to go out there and do those really uncomfortable things like discussing politics and asking people what they think about these issues, then we're going to keep our country going down the same path that it has. If you look back over the last 100 years, most of us as growing up, there are two things that we always heard that we weren't supposed to talk about at the dinner table, right? What were they? They're religion and politics. Now, if we look at our country today and we ask ourselves, what are the two areas we're probably in the worst shape that we've been in our lifetime? What are those two things? It's religion and politics. Could it be the fact that we have told ourselves and the previous generations told us as we were growing up that was something we shouldn't even talk about at the dinner table with our family members? Could it be that that's part of the reason that we are where we are today? I believe it is. And that's why one of the things that I'm very focused on is trying to help people talk about it. If you look at the left and why they continually move their ball forward for their progressive policies and why they quite regularly beat us, part of the reason is that they make political action as natural as part of their day as breathing is. They look and say, when we get up today, we want to do something political. It may be as simple as posting a message on Twitter or a Facebook status update that says something political. It might not be even overt. But progressives make it a habit of doing something every single day politically. And they make it part of their lifestyle, part of what they do. And as a result, they win. Because they're comfortable talking about it. They're comfortable engaging and discussing it with their friends and discussing it with their neighbors. A friend of mine 3 years ago, during Barack Obama's first campaign, he's a Republican consultant, but he was interested in finding out how responsive Obama's campaign was. And so he signed up as part of the neighborhood program in his area, and within a few hours he got 3 phone calls from people in his precinct that were block captains for the Obama campaign, reaching out saying, hey, we're going block walking this Saturday. What are you up to? We need your help. And one guy called him up and said, hey, we're having coffee over at my house tomorrow night. We'd love for you to come over. We want to talk about Senator Obama's plan for what he wants to do when he gets into the White House. And the offers kept coming. And it showed how natural it was for them to talk about these things. Now, there are 2 events that you need to be at. One of them is coming up on the 17th. All right, this is going to be this Saturday. American Jordan, we're calling our training bomb, kind of like the money bombs you guys hear about. We're doing a training bomb. It's going to be the single largest day of activist training in the history of the country. We're going to be training in 14 different states and I think 14 or 15 locations. And going to train well over 1,000 activists on that one day in how they can get active within their precincts, within their local areas, municipalities, and work together to hardwire their precincts to get active and have an impact in their community, because that's where it starts. The second one is on the 26th. It's in 2 weeks. Be back here. Myself and the rest of the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party and a bunch of other people will be coming in. It's going to be an evening of precinct-level activist training, looking at your individual precincts that you live in and how you can actually have an impact there. Now, if you don't believe that you can have a big impact in those things, then I'll run you through some numbers. Now, I'll take a couple questions here in just a minute. So, as the election approaches, we need to actually have a very specific get-out-the-vote program. It needs to be hardwired to get out there and contact like-minded voters that we previously identified. Now, we'll talk about how you do that identification at these 2 events that I just mentioned. So I won't be able to go into that too much tonight because I have just a few more minutes. Now, as part of its active neighbor-to-neighbor engagements, efforts as proposed have been shown to consistently boost turnout by 10 to 15% within that targeted group. So once you know who the likely voters are, who the folks that are most likely to get out there and vote are, if we know that, then we can reach out to them in a targeted way, and we can increase turnout by 10 to 15%. Now, when you start considering that in a lot of these races, it's very, very small margins and small vote totals that make the difference, it becomes even more impressive. So here's a look at some of the targeted voter-to-voter contact. This is the increase over baseline in a bunch of different areas across the country, the swing areas, the swing states. So look here, it varies, I'm not sure how you can see it, but it varies from like 7.6 all the way up to 18% increase as a result of door-to-door targeted voter contact. The average is 12.7, so out of all those different cases, the average increase, because I came up to you and I talked to you and asked you to go vote for somebody, is to get out and cast your ballot. You were 12.7% more likely to do that just because of the conversation we had. Now, you ask, can a few votes make a difference? I'll tell you personally, the reason that I got involved in politics was because the first election campaign I worked on, we lost by 12 votes. All right, that's what hooked me on this thing that is politics. As a kid, I was very passionate about it. 10 years old, my parents told me to get involved in this race. A friend of theirs was running for state house. It started out being 8 votes, on a recount it was 12. That hooked me on this thing that is politics. I'll tell you, a few votes can count. That's whether you look at 527 votes deciding who our president was back in 2000, or there's a few hundred votes up in Wisconsin deciding who the senator was. So in the 2010 Texas election, look at these vote totals. 24.7 million Texans. The average voting age is 18.79. There were 13.27 million registered to vote, and the November turnout was 4.98 million. 4.98 million people turned out to vote. In the GOP primary, though, there was 1.48 million. So your total need to win was 0.74. Okay, now Rick Perry himself, he actually avoided a primary runoff by 34,000 votes. That's much less than 1%. That's just a hair over 1/10%. Now in the primary races, it was even a bigger thing. It was a bigger difference. Because when you look at this, there were 150 state house seats. There were 76 GOP-held seats going into the 2010 election. As far as primary races, though, there were only 41 contested primary races. Now, some of these were open seats that people were running, multiple people were running to fill the void. Others there were actually only about 21 or 22 of these that were actually contesting an incumbent. The margin, less than 3,000 votes decided victory, was 33. For less than 2,000 votes deciding who won, it was 24. There were 17 votes decided by less than 1,000 votes, and there were 8 with less than 250. So think about this. Nearly 1 in 5 state house Republican primaries came down to 250 votes or less. That's small numbers, making a big difference. Remember the kind of power these guys had. 1 in 5 by less than 250 votes. Over 2 out of 5 came down to less than 1,000 votes. Not much. Not much at all. So for a house district with 50 precincts, say that's about the average, we're going to say 1,000 votes is 20 votes per precinct to find the difference. 250 votes is less than 5 votes per precinct. That's very, very little work. Say I told you that 12 votes is what hooked me on politics, losing by 12. I don't remember this, but my dad tells me that night when I was 10 years old, he came in my room after we came back from the watch party. And he said he heard me crying. He came in my room and he's like, "Raz, what are you crying about?" I said, "Well, Dad, we lost." And he said, "Well, Raz, you obviously seem to like this thing that is politics a little bit, and if you're involved very long, you'll find out you won't win every battle you pick, and you won't win every race that you're involved in. So you got to learn how to lose and get back up there and fight again." I said, "I know, Dad, but we knew 13 people who didn't vote for Becky. And I knew at 10 years old that I could have gone out there with a few more hours. If I'd known going into that day that it was going to come down to 12 votes, I could have found 13 people to vote for Becky Farah. Now, if you knew ahead of time that your district was going to come down to 250 votes, could you take part and go find 5 votes in your precinct?" Absolutely. If you knew it was going to be 1,000 votes, you'd go out and you could find 20. It wouldn't be that hard. So what you need to do between now and why you need to come on the 17th and come on the 26th is you need to be part of making something happen, of going and finding those few votes. Because I'll tell you, first of all, if we begin now when we should, and we actually start laying the groundwork to make these things happen, it's not going to take much time. It may take 5 or 10 minutes here and there. Give me an hour or two on a couple Saturdays. If we wait until the Saturday before the election, it's going to be too late. We may be able to spend all day for the last couple of days out there doing that. But it's kind of like the time compounding of money, right? If you're in your early 20s and start saving money away for retirement, it becomes much more valuable time. Whereas if you wait until you're 35 to start, you have to put in way more money, and you'll never reach that amount that you would have if you started earlier. So what I'm telling you right now is you need to come to those 2 events and you stay active. Now, myself, my organization, we're here to help in any way we can. Whether it's providing resources, and we have a lot of free stuff on our website, or we'll be providing more resources to folks that come through the training events, and I'm obviously helping and doing whatever I can to help y'all as the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, do whatever I can to help you guys, and I'll continue to do that. There's a lot to be done, and if we don't stay engaged and actually get out there and fighting, then we're not going to win. We can't. I'll leave you this one last thing. I was recently reading a biography of George Washington. And when they were talking about Valley Forge, we hear about Valley Forge and the hardships those men went through during the Revolutionary War. Their feet freezing, the frostbite, the starvation, all these things, these terrible circumstances they went under. And through a lot of reading about this, I kind of always thought in the back of my head, well, it must have really sucked to live in the colonies back in that time frame. Because if the guys in the field were suffering like this, obviously there had to be a lot of suffering going on with everybody back at home. That wasn't the case. The vast majority of the colonists went on living their day-to-day life with very little change from the time that the Revolutionary War started to the time it finished. As far as the amount of money they made, the luxuries they had, these things changed very little during that time period. There was a small fraction, less than 1% of the population that was involved in the type of hardships we see described in times like Valley Forge. That means a dedicated group of less than 1% of the population of our colonies secured our independence. They changed the course of history and the course of our nation. I will tell you today that we don't need a majority of people out there. We don't need a majority of registered voters. We don't need a majority of within a given political party. What we need to do is we need an active minority. We've heard that before, but I want to emphasize how small that minority can be and us still win. If we look at a national survey, over 40% of people that responded say that they are conservative when they're asked conservative, independent, or liberal, or conservative, moderate, or liberal. Over 30–40% say that they're conservative. When you break the numbers down, we need about 17.6% of the population to win any given election. It's pretty small. It's abominably small. But we can get out there, we can actually move these people around. We can actually win these battles on the ground by doing the types of things that Julie and Connie and the rest of the leadership of the Tea Party have been talking about. By coming to events like what we're talking about this weekend, taking a few hours out of your time, and on the hearing on the 26th. So I'd encourage you, come to those, get active and stay active. If there's ways that I can help you, let me know, and we'll be there for you guys and do whatever I can. It's pretty much my life, as Connie and Julie can tell you. So thank you guys very much. I'm going to be handing this off again, but I saw that there was one hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
Where besides the meeting is on the 17th?
The 17th is going to be over at the North Lake Community College over in Irving. If you go to AmericanMajority.org, it's one of the events coming up. You'll see, just click on Texas, or you just go to AmericanMajority.org/Texas.
What time?
It's going to start at 9:30 on Saturday morning. We'll start at registration at 9 o'clock. We'll kick off the event at 9:30. I'm going to be there. I'll do several hours of training. And Joanne Fleming is going to be there. She's going to give a legislative update talking about what happened in the last legislative session, what are some of the good things that happened, some of the bad things, help you as you're talking to folks this election cycle. Kent Mayo's going to be there talking about some of this stuff, about how you hardwire your precincts. I'll be doing some of that as well. We'll have Katrina Pearson talking about some of the municipal victories they've had up in Garland, fighting some of the Green Initiative stuff that they've had. Andrew Kerr from Texas Fiscal Responsibility will be there, talk for a little bit about some of the victories we had in the legislature this year and what we can do to help fight to keep some of the bad things from happening again next cycle. Any other quick questions? I don't want to abuse my time too much. I'm 6 sections shy of 15 minutes.
You did great.